Good, good day, good afternoon, everybody. So when we had uh, the U.S., Israel, and Iran war in June, I wrote an article and sent it to first our local newspaper over here, local, you know, the newspapers over here, and then to USA Today. Uh, and as uh, an American, and an American who was born and raised in Iran, as somebody who is fluent in both English and Farsi. I can read and write in Farsi and so on and so forth, right, as well as English. As someone who was concerned about the entire thing, right, I uh, uh, wrote that article going over uh, the delusions that were driving uh, the U.S. operation and the U.S. Public opinions in that conflict, essentially. Uh, in that article, I went over a whole bunch of lies that we were told, and I could see at that time. This is right after the war started in June. Okay, uh, so I want to go over the items, the points that I made in that article, uh, just to remind everybody uh, what we were told and what lies we were told that were later confirmed to be lies, and what to expect now that another conflict is looming. Uh, so I have the article in front of me. I'm going to some parts of it I'm going to read directly, and the other parts I'm going to just explain in conversational language. Uh, so uh, I start by, while the major news channels are rapidly preparing Americans for war with Iran, the truth is once again the victim. I am an American citizen, who was born and raised in Iran. I came to the U.S. when W was president. Since I can read both Persian and English news, I found it necessary to write this to first express my concerns as an American citizen. Second, dismantle some major one sided media reporting as well as delusional political mindsets. First, on my concerns. First, I mentioned that Iraq war and Afghanistan war together, they costed us about $10 trillion, 9, 10, according to different estimates, different articles, different research. And essentially, as someone who have lived in US for almost 20 years now, and having seen my generation in US and generation after me, I think we can all agree that that $10 trillion in Iraq and Afghanistan uh, evaporated or wiped out the prosperity of an entire generation, right? It wiped out the prosperity of the young generation that was coming to age and was coming to adult ages after Iraq and Afghanistan war, right? We saw all of that in the financial crisis of 2008, and we saw the explosion of debt after that, after the war with Iraq. We saw the inflation that we have had over past 20 years. We saw that in lack of public funding in everything, education, healthcare, everything, virtually. I think we can all agree that that money was completely waste. We killed a whole bunch of innocent people in those two countries. A whole bunch of our own people died, right? A whole bunch of our own soldiers committed suicide over here, unfortunately. Very sad. I happen to know some of them. So, again, waste of money, waste of life, waste of time, right? Now, Iran is larger in terms of population than both Iraq and Afghanistan. by far is much more advanced in terms of weaponry and military and more organized than Iraq and Afghanistan. And I think even in terms, and I think in terms of economy is also larger than them combined. In terms of area is larger. It has a very tough terrain. For war, it's surrounded by mountain. I am of course very familiar with Iran's geography, and it's very difficult. It's a country that is very difficult to attack, to invade, right? Uh, so that was the first point essentially, and I said that uh, that it was that it is sad to see the complete irrelevance of the U.S. Congress and Constitution when it comes to the most important decision of all, that is war. I personally believe that this is what will ultimately end the great American experiment. Hopefully, not soon, though. We pray for that, right? And I said, second point I made was, make no mistake, if China and Russia feel that the long term US war with Iran is a possibility, they would happily take this gift and ensure that America suffers the largest possible casualties. We all agree that the safety and security of Israel, Ukraine, or even Europe will be the least of our concerns at that point. Okay, so Russia, China, they are right there. Russia is essentially a neighbor of Iran through Caspian Sea. They have direct links to Iran, and China is right there next to them. They could make Iran an order of magnitude more devastating than Vietnam for us. Third point, I said that some polls show that 16% of the population, 16, supports war with Iran. I say 16% of the population will agree to anything that any one of the major news channels promotes. I don't care if a poll shows that 100% of the population is for or against something, or how the president gouges gauges the popularity of an issue in a particular week. That's why we have a Congress. Remember at that time, the news channels, they would keep showing these polls that, oh, there are this portion of population that think we should go to war with Iran. Essentially trying to normalize it, right? Justify. Oh, there are people who want it, so we might as well go, right? I don't care about any of that. We have a Congress. That's why we have a Congress, right? Uh, Next point that I made was that again, and I expect the same thing happen this time, right? That if we get into Iran conflict or any other conflict, I expect the media to come out and say, "Oh, this portion is that, this portion is saying that we should go to war," and so all kind of nonsense, as if that should decide the fate of the country. Why we have a government? Why we have a legislative branch? Why we have a Congress? Right. Next point that I made was that while our teenage boy Israel is fighting China and Russia's teenage boy Iran, we must understand that our main issue is with Iran's mommy and daddy. We have a ton of catching up to do on our domestic side to take them on, and could really use both those trillions of dollars. And mommy and daddy, I meant China and Russia in this case, who are our rivals. A lot of people call them enemies. Okay, same people that say we should go to war with Iran call them enemies. I call them rivals. But in any case, we need those trillions of dollars that is going to be wasted, and the same lives that are going to be wasted to pull ourselves up. Next point. Here is a controversial one. Is Iran having a nuclear bomb really the end of the world? This is a controversial, but I'm asking it. Remember the country whose officials helped Al Qaeda carry out 9/11 and later hid Osama bin Laden. Remember that country? Yes, Pakistan. They too have had nuclear bombs for a long time. Right. So Iran having nuclear bomb, I'm not sure is the end of the world. Again, that's a question. It's a controversial question, but it's something to think about. Now on to delusions. Uh, Quote, hitting these sites like Natanz has been a great success, and hitting Fordow will be the next nail in the last nail in the coffin. Uh, uh, End quote. Now, remember last time they were saying, "Oh, we're gonna hit this, we're gonna hit that, or we hit this." It's gonna that's the end of it. That's the end of Iran's. And then they send the bombers. They hit that. Was it? It was Natanz, right? Yeah, Natanz. They send the bombers, and they said that, oh, it was so successful. We obliterated everything over there. Okay, if you obliterated everything, why do we have to again go and bomb them again? All right. I said at that time, I said this is exactly what I said. The Iranian regime has been chanting this to America and this to Israel for 45 years now. They have been planning for this for 45 years. It is highly likely that A, Fordow might be just a decoy, and or B, their main operations are deep underground where US bombs simply cannot reach. That's what I said at that time. Also, they have likely planned their retaliation not only against an Israeli attack, but also against an American one. Right? And we saw last time. So, 2 points over here. First, that I said at that time, and I believe it still to this day, that their operation is more widespread than we think. We don't know all the sites. Okay? They have been preparing for this day for a long time. They have been spending a lot of money. They sell oil, they have money, no doubt about that, right? And it's a vast country to to hide these things. They have very tall mountains. The tallest mountain in Iran, in fact, happens to be to my hometown in north of Iran. It's about 18,000 feet. I happened to climb that mountain once. It's a dormant volcano. You only have gas, coming out of the top, and you always have a whole lot of snow on top because it's just very very tall, and the air is very thin. It's very difficult, and close to the peak, it's a sharp slope, and the air is very thin, and it's very hard. In the last part, it's not rocky. Okay, so it's more like a massive or giant hill. Essentially, it's just at the top. The air is thin, and there's a lot of snow up to your waist. Essentially, the snow is the last portion, the last, I would say, 300 meters, or 1,000 feet would be a little difficult to climb. But I have climbed it when I was in college, and and they have similar peaks in Iran close to that, to the same height, like 15,000 feet. You have whole bunch of those kind of mountains in Iran. Iran has two very long mountain chains. One of them is spanning the entire north of the country. The other one is spanning the entire west of the country. Okay, coming all the way from north west to south of Iran. So, and then on the right of these, you have those deserts. One of them being the Lut Desert, which has the highest temperature recorded on Earth in it. Okay, just to remind you that. All right. So again, very rough terrain for the war. Okay, that's that. Now, massive country, you can hide a lot of things under these mountains, and they have been doing it. That's first. The bombs that they sent, we sent last time. I was saying at that time that these are most likely decoy or empty sites. Iran's government, Iran's news, before US attacked them, because US sent them a message, kind of telegraph that they're gonna bomb, right? 2 3 days before that, they emptied. They said, and they came to Iran TV, and they mentioned that we emptied, we evacuated everything from Natanz, right? And I have been always telling that we bombed a bunch of empty sites, a bunch of empty sites. That's that. Okay. Even after the attack, again they came. The head of whatever agency in Iran in charge of those things came in the news and said that no, we evacuated. They were saying this for a few days before people were telling them, "Are you crazy? Just go with the narrative and say that yes, we were bombed, we were obliterated, so that they don't do it again." Even only after, like, I think 5 days or so, they changed their narrative, and they realized that they should go with U.S. narrative that, oh yes, it was a successful attack, and actually things got bombed and destroyed. All right, they only changed after 5 days. I know that again because I understand that language. I can watch their news, and none of that was broadcasted in US. Okay, so that's that. So that's one of the points I wanted to uh, uh, make over here. Second point, which I said that they planned their retaliation for this day. They have been preparing for many for a few decades now, right? Last time we could see how measured their response was to Israel, how they were ratcheting up on a daily basis, okay, against Israel, how they had a plan from the very beginning, and from the very beginning, their foreign minister said that President Trump could end this with one call only. So they immediately left. Okay, they immediately left a bridge intact so that for the entire conflict to end. Okay, so they handled it very professionally last time. Frankly, in my lifetime, that was the most professional I've seen Iran's government. I'm not a fan of them. I'm not a fan of Iran regime at all. But I could see, I can tell you this, that for the first time in my life, that in Iran's news and their media, they were telling the truth, and that was very surprising to me. That was very surprising to me. Okay, why is it that you tell the truth after lying and lying on a daily basis? Why is it that? Why? Because it works for you. Okay, because this time, finally, in reality, you won. Because the truth, right, is that you were successful, right? When truth works for you, of course, you're not gonna lie anymore, right? You're gonna tell the truth, and they were telling the truth. That was my first time in my lifetime I could see that. All right. Again, none of this was mentioned in any of the U.S. media, even in YouTube, right? Next point that I mentioned, that it was a quote that again some people were saying Iran has a limited arsenal of missiles and launchers and will run out of them soon. How do we know that? How do we know that without even knowing where the missiles are? How do we know that? Okay, Israel at the beginning said that we estimate they had 2,000. Then later said 8,000. I said that all of these are lies. Nobody knows. Even Iranian generals, they don't know that. Only maybe Iran's supreme leader knows, maybe with one or two generals. That's it. They're not going to tell that even to their president. They're not going to say that, right? Particularly after so many leaks and intelligence mess ups that they had, right? They're not going to say that to anybody else. We don't know that. Like I said, we don't even know where they are. If we don't know where they are, we don't know where they are. Why? Because we couldn't hit them, right? If we knew where they are, we could hit them. If we don't know where they are, how do you know how many are there, right? I tell you one thing, that once in Iran's news, one of the top generals came. One general that Israel wanted dead very badly, and they couldn't. So he went into hiding. He came out after they spread the rumor that he died, but he came out and he was alive. He is the guy who's in charge of, who appears to be in charge of these missile cities that they have underground. Once he said in their TV that we have, this is almost the exact quote from him, that if we show one missile city every week, if we show that, we have to show you things, we have to show you these for more than 2 years. This he said in Iran's news. Again, this, you never seen this in anyone in Western media. Okay, I know that because it was on YouTube. It came out. He said that this is before Iran-Israel war. What does that tell you? That means that they have about 100 or more than 100 missile cities under the ground. Okay, so that's that. Now again, that's a rough estimate based on what he said. I don't know. They may have less, a little less, than more. But I found it a little telling. Okay, and guess what? After the June war, ended, Israel's defense minister came out and said, "Yeah, in fact, we couldn't win this, because Iran has more than 25,000 missiles. From 2,000 that they lied the second day of the war to 25,000 after the war ended." Okay, in June. All right, so they were lying. I was right. Okay, so everything I said came true. And I said, how do we know if they're not? They don't even share this info with their own president. It is likely that all the estimates we see in the news are just make believe. The same applies to the launchers and launching facilities. You remember they kept saying, "Oh, we killed all the launching facilities. We killed everything." No, they were still sending missiles, right? Now, next point, I'm quoting, quote, Iran will now come and do some serious negotiations with us. That was something I said. Again, that was told last time that after this, Iran is going to come and negotiate with us. I said, good luck with that. If anything, this attack may push them to actually pursue nuclear weapons. I mean, what world are you living in, right? What world are you are you are you living in, right? You attack somebody, and and then you expect them to come and to negotiate with you. I mean, look at the world, right? The only country that uh, uh, stands up to U.S. and only dictatorship, and we don't do anything to them is what? North Korea. Why? Because they have nuclear weapon, right? I mean, at this point, it's a no-brainer, right? So, next point. Here's a quote. I'm quoting. There will be regime change as a result of these airstrikes. End quote. What I said was that really, with no boots on the ground, will people take to the streets and topple the regime while missiles are hitting their neighborhoods? This would be the first time in the history of the world that something like this happens. So people come to take to the street while missiles and bombs are coming and hitting them. People go to the street to topple the regime while missiles are coming. I mean, what the hell are you talking about? You saw what happened, right? People actually left the city, left Tehran, the most important city in Iran, right? Now, next point, and a quote here: "We have air superiority, so we can do whatever the heck we want over there." That was, remember, Trump was saying, "Oh, we have air superiority. We destroyed everything over there. We can do whatever the heck over there." Here, what I said was practically the same is true for Iran with their missiles over Israel and all nearby U.S. bases. Remember, Iran by the 12th by the end of that 12-day period, I think the 11, I think the 12th day, they sent like 2 missiles and one of them went through. Basically, Israel and the U.S., they were running so low on missile defense and air defense that Iran at that point could send anything, right? They had all separated over Israel, so who cares what you have? That's first. Second, since I still know people in Iran, I have some family there, right? Exactly the same day that President Trump said that we killed all of their air defense, I remember talking to someone in Iran, a family member, and they were saying that things are not bad. The only thing is that Iran, they said that we don't hear much explosion, like and they were at the center of this whole thing, the conflict. They were not in one of the they were in one of the most important cities. So they said that we there is not not many explosions, not near us. Somewhere else is there in the city, but the one thing that is very noisy and wakes us up overnight is Iran's air defense. So they said it's very noisy every time it shoots, dum, 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 and then when it turns, it squeaks. It's very noisy. We can hear it. Okay, imagine that. I mean, this is the same day that President Trump said that, okay, Iran is done, the air defense is done. So look at the scale of lies over here, right? Then they said another thing. We know where Khamenei is. This is what President Trump said. I immediately said that's a lie. That's a lie. Okay. If you really know where a potential target is, you either won't comment on it at all, or will just say you don't know. Why is that? So they stay put. Isn't that obvious? That if somebody is your potential target, you never say you know where they are, right? Right? So that's clearly a bluff. You never say where they are because you want them to stay put, right? Good. That's a bluff over here. Why you bluff like that? Because you're hoping that they will they will buy this bluff from you, and they will make a move, and then with your satellites you monitor their moves and then hit them. And guess what? Iran, they had 8 years of war with Iraq. They are expert in this cat and mouse type of games. They are not going to buy this kind of nonsensical bluffs. right? This is very childish, extremely childish. When we hit Osama bin Laden, did you hear anything about President Obama or anyone else in the government of US to say that we know where bin Laden is? No, not a peep. Nothing was mentioned until he was done, and then they came to TV and said, we did these operations, and then they made a movie, won some Oscars and whatnot, right? Zero Dark 30, very good movie. Anyway, so that's that. So that was clearly a lie, a childish lie, in my opinion. And I said that, on the other hand, if you don't know their location but have air superiority, you may say you do know, hoping to catch them if they move. Remember that President Trump's administration very publicly announced the removal of US non essential personnel from the Middle East a couple of days before the attack, thereby tipping off Iran's regime into hiding. That was another mistake. In any war, element of surprise is extremely important. Okay, so last time President Trump, he tipped them off, and then they by telling that we remove all of our personnel, and they immediately went to hiding, as if, I don't know, as if he was reluctant in giving Israel the green light to attack Iran. Okay, interesting matter to debate on, but anyways. Another point, and I'm quoting here, these different people, we have a great plan for war with Iran, and our politicians know the issue well. A good number of, end of quote, a good number of our politicians, Ted Cruz, for example, do not know anything about Iran. He doesn't know anything about it. You can go over his interview with Tucker Carlson around that time. President Trump's own handling of the issue over the past few days has been very far from anything planned. Remember, one day he would say, "Oh, we want the regime change." Next time he would say, "Oh, we don't want regime change." One day he would say that we want to hit Iran supreme leader. Next day he said, "No, no, no, we don't want to hit Iran supreme leader." No plan, no plans. I remember that you can go and search on YouTube that infamous interview of Ted Cruz with Tucker Carlson. Ted Cruz didn't even know what is Iran's population. Imagine that, and he was supporting this war and U.S. involvement, full scale involvement. Look at these idiots, really. Next point, quote, Iran will be the last crusade against the supporters of terrorism, end quote. If one holds this belief today, after the experiences of Afghanistan, Iraq, ISIS, Libya, Tunisia, Syria, Yemen, and so on and so forth, etc., etc., they are just plain delusional, right? After so many countries, we still have terrorism. If you believe that Iran is the last one, you're just delusional. And I have another section on media misinformation that was going on at that time. Again, I'm reading this article that I wrote at that time, because I know if God forbid we get into another conflict similar to this in next few weeks, you're gonna see exact same nonsense coming out in the media and being said by our politicians and our news channels. Now, this section that I have on media misinformation. You see no report of Israeli air defenses malfunctioning and hitting back inside Israel, although videos of that are abundant. We also know that Israel has cracked down on reporting Iran's hits. So Israel, immediately after the second day of war, put a massive censorship in place on reporting. So you could only see people reporting, filming with the cameras and sending to YouTube and TikTok and all that, right? None of the official news agencies could do any reporting, essentially. Now, we have, and the videos are now there, you can see Israel's own missile defense malfunctioning and coming back and hitting. It's very funny, in fact, to look at it, to watch it. Coming back and hitting Israel's own land. It was so anyways. Second, quote, Iran hits civilians, end quote. Civilian casualties in Iran are several times that of Israel, according at least to the report that was at that time. Even if you don't believe Iran's numbers, like many, just take the number of Iranian military leaders and scientists assassinated at home and multiply it by 4 or 5, which is their wife and kids, right? I should add that Iran has hit plenty of military and strategic targets inside Israel. Just watch the videos online. I think at this point, it's very clear. They hit their, version of their defense defense ministry building, the Mossad building, but they basically towards the end they could hit anything they want, right? Uh, Next point, Iran has hit a hospital. They were saying. So did Israel in Iran 2 days before that. Exactly. Again, that didn't make it to U.S. news, but it was in Iran news. At the you know it was the videos were were everywhere. Was that it was that's that. In fact, at some point I could see that Iran is just retaliating on a particular base. Like they hit Iran's ministry, I think, of defense. Then Iran hit their their ministry of defense. So the fact that Iran could hit wherever they wanted inside Israel is actually very scary, very scary. Okay. Next point, quote, but Israel issues evacuation evacuation orders for Tehran residents, end quote. Iran has been issuing the same for Israeli residents repeatedly before his attacks. Okay, but it's rarely mentioned in the U.S. media. Okay, so you say, oh no, Israel is hitting, but they are also issuing evacuation orders for residents in Tehran, for example. Sure, Iran was doing the same thing for Israeli when they hit Israeli news channel in retaliation of Israel hitting their news agency, right? So they issued an evacuation order. So now, in any case, and I ended my article by saying that while I sincerely pray that President Trump and our political leaders make the right decisions, it's critical for the sake of American lives and wallets that we don't fall for our own propaganda or that of Israel or Iran. God bless the United States of America. You guys have a good day.